Hello, Simone. I'm excited to talk to you today. Today, we are going to be discussing the popularization and development of the term self-actualization, as well as the damage it has done to society. Tracing it, I think it's a horrible concept that is upstream of a lot of what makes the urban monoculture so toxic to a
Oh,
person's mental framing of reality.
okay.
We will provide alternate frameworks, which I think are better. And we will also be exploring the interesting truth behind the current term self-actualization, which is that it actually came from a pretty base concept. Self-actualization is, even in the words of the guy who popularized it, a rebranding of the concept of Nietzsche's Übermensch for a progressive audience.
No! Oh my God, the psyops of that. Wait, so was that Maslow of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Maslow was the one who popularized it, and before him, it meant something entirely different.
Wow. Okay, I'm very curious to see what your ultimate take on all this is. Like, is it going to be a play on that South Park episode of like, we have to invert the pyramid? Are we now putting just survival at the top?
Survival at the top. I actually like that a lot.
The pyramid doesn't work. We've already tried it.
It's upside down.
What?
Sir, the pyramid is upside down.
Turn the pyramid upside down. You can't be serious. That would put butter and fat at the top of the damn food pyramid.
Yes, we have to invert the pyramid.
Just do it.
Hierarchy of needs. I love that the White House actually posted a clip from that episode when they changed the food pyramid. And the funny thing is everyone was like, I mean, it's basically right. Like the nutritionists were like, I'm not complaining about this.
Yeah. No. Honestly, because I listen to like all leftist media. Basically, the leftist critique of it was not that it was substantively wrong, because they can't actually argue against it. It's fairly correct, as you say. So can you imagine what the leftist critique of it instead had to be?
It wasn't a respectable way to announce it.
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, okay, yeah, they were like, well, I can't believe they used South Park too.
But they took out sugar.
No,
they did take out sugar as a ever. They're like,
I know. Well, because you shouldn't. There should be no added sugars. Period. There's no point for that.
Right.
Anyway, no, it was. Well, how dare they insinuate that people can afford vegetables and meat? I'm not kidding. That is 100% seriously. I think that was the Philip DeFranco take, if memory serves. So yeah, they were very freaked out about it, that someone would have the gall to suggest. And then they even went to a clip of some either Trump administration official or health official talking about that. No, it actually was quite affordable. That every American adult can eat a piece of broccoli and a chicken breast and I can't remember some other thing.
I'm
like,
imagining
under $5, and they're like, "What? You think people can survive off of just a piece of broccoli and a piece of chicken?" Like they're just freaking out about it. Anyway, so that was
but what I love is the idea of a progressive rebranding of the food pyramid, except they just take out all the foods they perceive as expensive. So it's just
all bread that you get in the bread line.
It's all the bread. They take out all of the meat and the vegetables and the fruits, and then they're like, and we'll add in what are other cheap foods like chips and Fritos to like those categories. And it's like, and we're not going to take out sugar because of course, in oil, right? You gotta deep fry stuff. That's the new approved progressive one that they wanted. I love that you watch progressive media, so you know this stuff. But let's get into this, all right?
They call it bread tube for a reason. I think they're very, very insulted when their bread.
They got to get all that soy from somewhere.
Well, I love bread though.
Or gluten.
My attempt to make homemade crumpets with my sourdough starter this morning was a complete failure.
All right.
Humiliated.
So Kurt Goldstein, a German neurologist and psychologist, coined the term self-actualization. Originally, oh my God, am I going to try to pronounce this? Slebeteverderlichung in German.
Bippity boppity boop.
I should put the
there you go.
I guess. All right.
Okay.
And it's 1939, so the book is only as old as 1939.
Wow. And that was the pre-Nietzschean self-actualization.
Yes, this was its original usage. The organism, a holistic approach to biology derived from pathological data in man. he introduced it within organismic theory, describing it as a fundamental driver for an organism to realize its full potential and maintain its wholeness, especially in the face of challenges like brain injuries.
Oh, so is it like a lizard with its tail cut off and it self-actualizes if it grows the tail back? Are we talking like that?
I think he's talking more about how brain injuries self-correct. Remember, his background is in neurology.
Yeah, and it has been like if you have a stroke, you have to relearn your actions.
Well, it's not
Sometimes
just if you're born or you have a serious brain injury as a child, you can typically perform unnoticeably different from other adults. Even if, and there's been cases where people are born like without a hemisphere of their brain or without a huge section of their brain, and they can typically live mostly normal lives. So, he is right in that regards. But what I find interesting is I think if you recontextualized his initial take on this, which is to say it is a fundamental driver for an organism to realize their full potential and maintain wholeness. If we're just looking at it like that, I think then it's a good term. It basically means to breed, because that's what an organism exists to do, and not die, right? Like,
yeah, or just to return to a normal stasis kind of state. Yeah.
To say breeding and not dying is self-actualization, I say, okay, good. Yeah, that's a decent term. But
you are going to go for this is inverting the pyramid already. I can tell. Oh my god.
Survival invert the pyramid. Yeah, okay. The concept was popularized by American psychologist Abraham Maslow, who adapted and refined it in his 1943 paper, A Theory of Human Motivation, where he positioned self-actualization as the pinnacle of his hierarchy of needs. Maslow's work gained widespread attention in the 1950s and 1960s through books like Motivation and Personality, 1954, and Towards a Psychology of Being, 1962, framing it as the ultimate human motivation, achieving one's innate potential after lower needs, physiological, safety, love, esteem, are met. He studied historical figures like Albert Einstein and Eleanor Roosevelt to identify traits of self-actualized individuals, such as peak experiences, autonomy, creativity, and realistic perception of the world.
Roosevelt, of all people.
Right. Well, what a cooked brain do you have to be like Eleanor Roosevelt, self-actualized?
That's who I think of. Well, I mean,
even Einstein, right? He did come up with some great theories when he was a kid, like very young. But if you look at his later work, a lot of it actually held back the field of particle physics and theoretical physics.
Oh.
Yeah. Basically, he hated any ideas in physics that were probabilistic rather than deterministic, which is really important when we were developing the field of quantum mechanics. So things like spooky action at a distance, he just saw as ridiculous. Basically, if a concept went against his presuppositions, he would push against it. And so a lot of ideas that we needed early in the development of our understanding of the quantum world, which basically breaks a lot of normal physical norms, he was staunchly against it because he was so respected. It held back the field a lot. And so to say that he is the pinnacle of like self-knowledge or an understanding of the world, I think basically shows that Maslow is like the perfect pop psychologist, like the epitome of everything that I hate about pop psychology, because to him, being a self-actualized person basically meant like being a famous person within the progressive sort of washing of history. I'm sure he added, Eleanor Roosevelt in there. He's like, well, I need some women, so I'll choose one that happened to be married to a successful man, right? And that's, which I think is really bad for a lot of reasons. He could have at least gone with like Marie Curie or something, right?
Yeah, right. She also had a lot of kids, didn't she?
Did Marie Curie or Eleanor Roosevelt?
No, Marie Curie. Right. I think Eleanor Roosevelt was childless.
I don't know. You can look it up.
Yeah, will do. I think Marie Curie had like 4 kids or something. And Eleanor Roosevelt had 0, but I'll correct myself if I'm wrong.
Over time, the concept evolved within humanistic psychology, the quote-unquote third force in psychology that emerged in the mid-20th century as a counter to psychoanalysis and behaviorism. Psychologist Carl Rogers contributed in the 1950s by emphasizing, quote unquote, actualizing tendency in client-centered therapy, viewing it as an inherent drive towards growth and fulfillment in a supportive environment. By the 1960s and 1970s, self-actualization influenced the human potential movement, including practices like encounter groups in Esalen Institute workshops, or Esalen Institute workshops. So I decided to look this up to see what it was. And the Esalen Institute is a renowned nonprofit and holistic retreat, an education institute located in Big Sur, California. And it is widely regarded as the birthplace and the epicenter of the human potential movement, a mid-20th century wave focused on exploring and realizing untapped human capabilities through psychology, spirituality, bodywork, and personal growth. The Esalen Institute pioneered the integration of Eastern philosophies like meditation and yoga with Western science and humanistic psychology, helping popularize such practices such as Gestalt therapy, mindfulness, somatic work, holopathic breath work, 5 rhythms dance, Rolfing, making them more mainstream. That's like a weird cult that was sort of big in that period. Cult, mix of cult and psychology. It was very much like figure it out yourself sort of stuff. I don't think it was as, necessarily harmful, but if it's what I'm remembering, it is. So Simone, what'd you find?
It froze, so I'll let you know.
Didn't your parents go to Esalen Institute workshops? Est is what they went to. Okay, that's what I was thinking of. Est.
Marie Curie had 2 daughters. Oh, I was totally wrong. Marie Curie had 2 daughters, and Eleanor Roosevelt had 6 children, 5 sons and 1 daughter. Oh, with 1 son dying in infancy. That's really sad.
Well, at least Eleanor is meeting our pro-natalist agenda here. Actually,
yeah, good for her. I was totally wrong on that. Yeah,
and I love when the people are like, "Hey, you can't have a lot of kids as a woman and achieve great things," and it's like, well, I mean, the women of history would like to disagree with you.
Yeah, you just do it, and that's it. It's part of it's somewhat of a bad toupee thing,
Well, no, it's a them thing, right? Like I bet he'd get criticized for putting Eleanor Roosevelt on the list because she had so many kids, doesn't make a good progressive icon anymore. And I'm sure people are going to be like, don't you know about her charity work? And it's like, no, I don't, because charity work doesn't matter. Generally speaking, charity work doesn't matter in the grand scheme of human history.
Sometimes it worsens problems. That's one of our bigger problems.
Yeah, it seems to generally make things worse. I agree with that, unless you approach it in a very specific way. But that's a whole other conversation, and not today's conversation.
Not today, no.
So apparently she didn't even do anything that big with charity. Her big thing was joining the UN, famously ineffective body, and promoting the idea of a universal declaration of human rights, which also famously did very little for anyone important. So apparently, to get on this guy's list of self-actualized, if you're a man, you need to invent general relativity. If you're a woman, you need to F a famous person. That's basically the way the world works for these freaking people. But what you can see here that's being described, I think it's very important, that around the concept of self-actualization, an alternate form of psychology, and not just an alternate form of psychology, but an alternative school of what psychology is meant to optimize, began to grow both within the public narrative, but also within the academic institution. And this allowed for some branches of like talk therapy to see their goal as moving the individual towards the concept of self-actualization, which again, here it really matters what that concept is and how it is derived.
Yeah.
If it is the goal of a school of psychology. Because what happened with the urban monoculture is it went, and when it was trying to determine what is an individual's goal in life, it wanted that goal to sound large and sophisticated and try to remove the accusation that it's just hedonism. And so it went to academia, which is like its priest caste, right? And it said, well, who studies like what is a life well lived? And it's, well, psychologists do. Right. So it's okay. Well, what are their various models for what you are optimizing for? And the other schools of psychology don't have as strong of a singular motivational endpoint. And so self-actualization became the endpoint, the goal of everything within the urban monoculture. And it began to get worked into a lot of scientific movements as well, as you'll see. I will point out, I do not think self-actualization was ever good science. I think that it epitomizes, I mean, the mere fact of how he came up with the concept, that he basically looked up famous people who he kind of respected, or that he didn't think that he'd get a lot of pushback on, and then pretended to derive a theory of needs from them, when in reality, he was just thinking through himself. Like, if you want to just like blow up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Stephen Hawking's, like, clearly Stephen Hawking's didn't just live with, you know, horrible,
debilitating,
care for most of his productive career, but also his caretaker / nurse was apparently like very well documented as abusive.
No, toward him.
Yeah. So just for more clarification, the abuse accusations come against his second wife, not his first wife, and were in part made by his first wife. And they were investigated by Cambridge police. He always denied them. They later got a divorce. There have been no clarifications about whether they were real.
Well, and his sexual needs weren't being met. And I think he told his wife to go sleep with other people, didn't he? He's sort of famous for that.
I don't know all of that, but
my understanding was he was like, just go. Like, I'm really not going to hold you to this marriage because obviously I can't keep up my part physically due to this. So yeah, I mean, he really wasn't, but he was 100% making the absolute most of his mind. And that's where I'm really struggling with this, because as soon as I heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I got super excited about it because I contextualized self-actualization as having everything else sorted in your life such that you were able to completely live in your prefrontal cortex. You're not in your amygdala. You're not in your you're not. I mean, he's talking about the life lesson he had. But my thought was that you are not in survival mode. You're not freaked out about stuff. So you're able to just be totally in your prefrontal cortex and just be about ideas and concepts and advancing civilization and inventing and moving towards science. But that doesn't seem to be what this is about.
Which is, no, it's actually, I'm going to create the best analogy for the way he actually defines self-actualization. Closest term I have found to the way that he transformed Nietzsche's concept is being OTP clear in Scientology.
Being OTP what?
So there's a status called being clear, which means you have no more thetans attached to you. One of the highest statuses you can have within Scientology. Okay. And it means that once you have this, basically you are no longer burdened by like the problems of this world. And then you get all these magical powers. And that's basically the way that self-actualization is defined, even by Maslow. It's like clear out all of these lower states, and then you enter a state that is either almost magical in its conceptualization or just definitionally good without an explanation of how it's good.
But isn't like, well, I mean, think about it this way, right? But people who are hung up on sex and seeking after that, I think, you know, in some way haven't had their validation or just basic sexual needs met. And so they're held back because they have basically intrusive thoughts about sex. If people are food insecure, they'll have intrusive thoughts about food that prevent them from being more productive and moving forward. And you could call those thetans, you could call those whatever you want, but that's a thing. And I think even same with I would argue hedonism, just feeling good, implies some level of feeling of insufficient physical security, so that you actively try to seek out physical comfort because you don't feel like you can get it whenever you need it.
You grabbed onto something really important here before we go further. But I love, this is all stuff I plan to get to later, but I actually think it's really good to bring it in here. You point out the real challenge, which is, are there things that are mentally preventing you from focusing on the bigger concepts in life, a bigger purpose in life? And I'll get to a good way to structure this for yourself. But are there things that are blocking you from reaching that point? And it is useful to have a word for talking about those things. The problem is is that there are two core ways to approach this. One of them is super toxic, and one of them is very useful and healthy. And the way that he contextualized it automatically rolls into the toxic category, which is to say you can either remove all of the things that are blocking you from focusing on the bigger concepts in life, the bigger questions in life, by literally removing them from your life, right? By literally never being hungry, never being uncomfortable, never not feeling love, never not having, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Or you can remove them from affecting you by learning to better control your own mind.
To stop caring.
Yeah, to better control what you care about and what you allow to affect you. So, and this isn't a new concept. But one thing I love about Catholicism, people hear that from Malcolm, they're like, what? But I do love this, is that many of their sects, like the Opus Dei being one of the most famous, practice various forms of mortification. And mortification, and many like mainstream Catholics will do this, forms of mortification, I think is an incredibly mentally healthy practice if practiced correctly, where they will wear things like bands that are constantly digging into them and causing
hair shirts,
constant pain throughout the day, which they learn to suppress. And when you learn to suppress that pain, that then ability can now be repurposed to suppress sexual desires or desires for food indulgence.
Yeah, you're not going to be super avoidant about stuff just because you think you might feel a little bit of pain and discomfort because you're so used to it. It's the default in your life.
Right. You overcome it as somebody like, say, Stephen Hawking would, right? By, or Helen Keller would, or something like that, right? Like by learning how to remove its effect on you, i.e. you basically learn to make yourself immune to parts of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that is where true and meaningful actualization comes from, if there was a concept of actualization. But conceptualizing actualization of being at the top of this pyramid defaults people to wanting to fill all the stages of the pyramid below that before they begin to address but I could have just learned to ignore all that stuff.
Well, and I think, I just see that as an insane misinterpretation, because housing security, food security, and sexual security can be endless voids. And I think you actually see this when we see discussions of socialism or human dignity among the left, where there's been this creep from human dignity involving the right to the pursuit of happiness, for example, right? The right to the pursuit of these things, to not only do I deserve food, but also I deserve best in class medical care that I don't pay for. And I deserve a TV, and I deserve a house of a certain standard. Like there's just this creep, this hedonic treadmill of like, well, I don't live a life of dignity if I don't have a smartphone and a flat screen TV and a nice apartment and a trip a year, whatever, right? And these are things that, this idea that you will ever be satisfied sexually or food wise, it's not about that. It's about reaching the point at which you don't care anymore. There's not like an amount, like you just need 200 sex units and then you've accomplished this rung of the pyramid, you can move on.
So you are absolutely correct about this, Simone. And I hope you're now seeing what I mean when I say that Maslow's hierarchy of needs built the framework, what it means to have reached, nirvana, or what's it called? Enlightenment. That it's become sort of enlightenment for progressives, but it is achieved through meeting hedonistic needs underneath it. So even though Maslow would say, well, self-actualization is itself not about hedonism-maxing, he basically conceptually set up his framework to lead people down a road of hedonism-maxing before they can achieve this, and not just hedonism-maxing, but sort of self-love maxing. Right? Kirsha 5 months ago did a video I just watched, it was like an hour and a half, and it was really fascinating. And it was titled, and I thought it was like a clickbait when I read it, and it was not a clickbait. Father of 7 leaves family to become a child. So a father who was married and taking care of 7 kids, left his family to enter a polyamorous relationship with another man and woman where he acted as their 10-year-old daughter, who the dad also had relations with. And he would do like play behavior with their granddaughter and stuff because he was their daughter. That was who he really was. And there was an NPR piece on this, like, I think it was NPR. That was the voice they were using. It could have been something other than NPR, but it sounded like a high production value.
That INTJ voice.
Yes. And hey, I'm technically INTJ, Simone, so I get the word.
Yeah, but you don't have an INTJ voice. God.
But anyway, so they do this NPR. The people hate my voice, though. The internet hates my voice, I think. But I don't know. I can't change it. It's very unique. But anyway, so they have this interview, right, where they cover him, and it's produced, and it ends with like a sappy, like, well, in his new life, he has found love without judgment, which he just wasn't able to get from his old community, you know.
There's judgment.
There's
that. Judgment.
Well, no. In this new family where he lives as a child. And it was very much like, we hope that like more of the world can reach a state like this. So there are like other people who see this guy doing this and want to broadcast this as like an inspirational, positive story to the world about how his old community was bigoted against his, and it's clear, like the story is really like, it shows the degeneracy of the age we live in, where his wife tried to like humor his cross-dressing habit, it seems, for a long time. And he just decided, as sort of the trans movement came out, oh, I'm not a cross-dresser, I am a woman. And he would talk about how his daughter would sometimes like steal his purse or something without realizing it, you know, and he'd just, live as a woman sometimes at home or whatever. And eventually he learned that he could be a little and go down that path. And if you want to see other lifestyles, if you want to get an idea of other people who have like maxed this, you can look at our video on Anna Valen's life called The Life of a Cenobite, I think is what we called it. Yeah. Funny that we're talking about Kirsche right now because she was the reporter who tried to cancel Kirsche.
Oh, yeah. Small world.
She has a very detailed Substack about her life and trying to find purpose and meaning. And you can really see that her search for purpose is about a search for self-validation from a wider community, as well as an endless search for hedonism. And they both always end up feeling hollow for her at the end, because she, in this search for self-validation, has come up with a very odd persona of who she really is. In her case, is a giantess.
Anna Valens is the giantess,
even though she was born a man. But that
you're not going to approach the elephant in the room that she's not a giantess. That's the harder thing to solve.
Right. Well, I mean, the bigger problem is she hadn't even done all of her, she still had male genitalia, and she was confused that the progressives who pretended that they accepted trans people didn't want to validate her in the way she wanted to be validated, which was through giving her sexual access to them. And they didn't want to give them, like, they're like, yes, we respect you, but I don't want to sleep with you. Right. Like, and she, that for her was not enough validation. So she could never reach the top of the hierarchy of needs. She needed to basically stop there instead of saying, wait, I have the thoughts in my head of wanting to be X and wanting to be Y. How do I better suppress these wants? Because these wants are not constructive in terms of what I think a meaningful life is. And then it's, what is a meaningful life? Well, now you've moved to self-actualization. As soon as you've entered the conversation of what is actually a life well lived, you've entered the realm of self-actualization, which can be done right now, or what meaningful self-actualization is. But to continue here.
Actually, just something you said made me think of that line. There's actually several lines in the Bible about this, but basically the ones in relation to, it's, you don't need to focus so much on materialism, but just being like, what God provides for birds. Like, the birds aren't worried about, I mean, they actually kind of are obsessed with where they're going to get their food, but like, God provides, focus on what your job is, whatever that's supposed to be. right? I'm not
Yeah.
remembering the exact lines because I'm not.
So the quote she's thinking of is, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds in the air. Do they not sow or reap or store away in barns? And yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? But seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble on its own." That's sort of what we're doing right now. We're at a Jesus take the wheel moment in our lives. We don't know where our future income is going to come from. I mean, our fab is
No,
fully
but
working now.
what I'm saying though is there is a biblical basis for this as well. That for arguably thousands of years, people handed down wisdom has been, hey, don't get too obsessed about food, shelter, money, sex. Focus on serving God, whatever that means for you.
Yeah. Well, and as interesting is I almost think that this is an inversion of the Buddhist concept of enlightenment. And I think that both show
I disagree,
toxicity.
because the Buddhist concept of enlightenment involves letting go of your attachment to things. And I think that the point of this is I don't care about the food or the shelter or the sex or the social validation. And that's what I thought the pyramid was all about.
I'm talking about Maslow's contextualization of self-actualization here, whereas the Buddhist is trying to fully suppress all outside desires and wants and everything like that.
Not suppress, let go.
Say what you want. It's the same thing. Make it so that those needs
because it's like it's let it. You know the whole. You will not fear. Fear is the mind killer. You let it pass through you, and only you remain. That is very like the Buddhist thing. But just take that in anything that you feel. Just dukkha, like any like. You are not hunger, like hunger passed through you and only, just I'll take that and apply it to everything. And that's Buddhism.
I understand that Buddhists try to say it in a fancy way that makes it seem something fancier than emotional suppression. But what it functionally is, because if you are
Malcolm, you are not emotionally suppressing like some insane sex drive. You did it and you slutted it up and now you just don't care that much anymore.
If you are a Buddhist, okay, you are still a human being. You are still feeling hunger if you are hungry. You have just learned to not allow that emotional pull to make you act on it or to interrupt your other mental processes.
I don't know.
You can call that whatever you want.
But you and food too. Like you used to like invest a lot of time in going out to eat cool meals and stuff. And now you eat one meal a day and you're like, well, like,
right, but that's because I found out the hack to this. We're going to talk about that later. Okay. But the Buddhist versus the Maslow's hierarchy of needs haver, right? The guy who has everything, and the Buddhist who has learned to suppress everything. I think both of them have missed the point, because once you have reached that state, i.e., either you have every need that you want fed to you, or you have reached enlightenment and you no longer are affected by those needs. The point of reaching those two states should have been okay, now that I am not distracted by lower order biological or self-affirming thoughts, I can think about what is a life actually well lived. And I can construct myself and my lifestyle based on what a life actually well lived is. And if you're just sitting alone in a temple, I do not think by most sane people's standards, that's actually a life well lived. You have done nothing to contribute to the civilization that bore you and that sacrifices with you, because a lot of these monks live off of donations, right? You are living a life that is fundamentally one of the most hedonistic and self-satisfactory of any living human, because it is a life wholly dedicated to your own mental state.
Your little pet project. That is true. That is kind of messed up that everyone else has to work and give you rice for your little rice bowl just so you can get enlightened. But they don't have time to get enlightened because they are too busy surviving and also
what they'll tell
you
is, oh, you drew it in your next life. You serve me in this life. So in your next life,
I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's a little. I'm sure they have some profound, at least, answer for that.
People who have watched our track videos knows I see Buddhism as an anti-spiral religion, which means that I see it as being a personification of sort of evil on earth. If you haven't watched our track series, which is our like religious series, which I understand if you haven't, the concept of spiral versus anti-spiral it builds on a distinction made in an anime, Gurren Lagann, which is philosophies fundamentally fall into one of two buckets. Either they're about the intergenerational and intermomentary evolution, which is sort of the destruction and building up and improving of things, which makes it a spiral thing, the evolving of things, or the reduction of things, the striving to remove humanity suffering from the world, which would make it an anti-spiral philosophy. So a spiral conceptualization of reality sees reality as something that is constantly evolving towards something greater, where anti-spiral beliefs towards reality typically see reality as a cycle that must be ended.
We evolve beyond the person we were a minute before. Little by little, we advance a bit further with each turn. That's how a drill works. Mark my words. This drill will open a hole in the universe. And that hole will be a path for those behind us. The dreams of those who have fallen. The hopes of those who will follow. Those two sets of dreams weave together into a double helix, drilling a path towards tomorrow.
Yeah, in other words, you argue that Buddhism wants to genocide sentience.
It does. That is actually its stated goal. I remember I first told you this because you were raised partially Buddhist. You went to like Buddhist churches and everything like that. Like you were raised fully Buddhist. Yeah. And you were like, no, it doesn't. And I was like, yes, it does. Actually, like, go read. And then you came back a few days later and I heard you argue that yes, it does to somebody. And I was like, wait, when did you change your mind on that? And what was your
I just realized that you were right. And then but when you heard me arguing, that was at one of our dinner parties in New York City, and the guy had lived with like Zen monasteries for a while. Like he was like quite in it, and he was like, oh yeah, I mean, you're right. It's just when you put it that way, it sounds so bad.
It is a genocide of sentience. I can imagine nothing worse in all creation as a goal. Yeah. I have in one of my fictional sci-fi universes, like the Buddhists being the big bad, trying to end reality, and it's
at least Maslow's hierarchy of needs doesn't do that.
I mean, I think it's just as bad.
No, so the Buddhist version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just like a gun at the top of the pyramid and like, do it.
The glass the planet. I mean, they're actually like anti-utilitarians, right? Like that is what Buddhism is. It's anti-utilitarianism turned into a religion.
Negative utilitarianism.
Negative utilitarianism turned into a religion. It is David Benatar, the religion.
Yeah.
Existence is suffering, therefore end existence. Anyway, enough of that. We're going to really piss off some watchers who haven't watched our tracks or have gone into this longer. And I can go into a bunch of quotes from text, but I'm not going to go into here because I know I'm right on this one. In the late 20th century, criticisms arose. Some argued Maslow's model was overly Western and individualistic, overlooking collectivist cultures where self-actualization might involve communal harmony rather than personal achievement. I love that, right? Positive psychology in the 1990s and 2000s, led by figures like Martin Seligman, built on it by integrating empirical research on well-being, flow states from Mila Csikszentmihalyi or something, and hedonic happiness, focusing on purpose and virtue over hedonic pleasure. I am not going to put those dirty foreign words in my American tongue, Simone. Czechyanovich or whatever, So anyway, positive psychology, I really think is the version of the psychology movement that grew out of self-actualization. And that was really big in the 90s and 2000s. And a lot of EAs act like it's this like great form of psychology or this non-harmful form of psychology. And it's extremely harmful. By the way, before I get further, if you're wondering about like my ultimate hack to the suppression of thoughts and needs, while also, building your life into something where you are working towards the future and working almost, I think, as hard as you can towards building a better future for humanity. I mean,
I can vouch for that. Malcolm he's never worked harder. I mean, he was from the day I met him, the hardest working person I ever met.
You too. That's why I wanted to marry you. I was like, this is what I'm in for.
You work harder today than you have ever worked since the day I met you, which is insane.
But anyway, yes. So how? What's my hack? Opioid agonist.
Oh, just naltrexone. I should have figured.
I'm pretty much always on naltrexone. So for people who don't know, naltrexone is an opioid agonist which blocks the pleasure pathways that you feel from opioid pathways, right? Which are caused by things like, say, Facebook scrolling, gambling, other addictive behavior patterns. I originally started taking it to lower my drinking, and it was very effective at that. Then I realized that it basically had a positive effect on almost everything in my life, because like I haven't checked Facebook in like years at this point. I made a post recently, like an update on my life, but I haven't checked Facebook in years.
I think I have a theory that this might also have a genetic basis, because I feel like my life is what Malcolm describes he feels like on naltrexone. He's like, I just don't like, because I never understood what it was like to feel any sort of addictive response to things.
And then people will be like, well, you didn't really master those impulsive emotions, right? You used something else. And it's like, yes, but hold on. Because I'm human, that has always been an option. This is like saying the Europeans didn't really beat the Native Americans. They shot them with superior technology. It's like, well, the point was winning. The point of shutting down these emotions, right? Like these impulsive or intrusive thoughts, was so that I could focus on structuring my life to be one that, well, from my perspective, what I think matters, and we'll get to how to determine this for yourself, that contributed to human civilization. That's all I cared about, right? I didn't care about the individual, like winning those individual battles was pointless to me. I just wanted it gone so I could focus on work, the bigger thing. And from my perspective, you are being masturbatory and self-indulgent by engaging in a battle that you don't have to engage in. You are the person who, when a forklift is right there, insists on lifting the heavy boxes yourself. Somebody else is saying, well, that'll take you 4 times as long. Just use the forklift, right? Like, you're not better for doing that. You're a dumb butt who had and this is actually an example of your self-vision being so intrusive that it beats living a life of value, right? Because with that time that you spent lifting those boxes rather than using the forklift, you were unable to educate yourself to learn more about the world, develop a better understanding of the world, or act in a way that directly contributed to human civilization. You specifically made a decision to indulge your self-image over things of greater value, which shows that you are a slave to that. A note here, I'm not putting myself out here as like a master of, I mean, I think I'm uniquely good. I've done a lot with my life, like you and I have so far. I mean, 5 kids, 5 books, run major companies, graduate degrees from Stanford and Cambridge. A lot of people, CEOs of a company that pulled in 70 million a year at one point. That's pretty big. Oh yeah, we started the prenatalist movement. That was big. Our podcast is doing well enough. I mean, I hope we continue to grow. But you know, I've done a lot in the time that I've had, and it's because I've been able to allow the things that distract me to distract me less than they otherwise might. But there is nothing less masturbatory about playing video games for a bit every night than there is for taking extra time doing something quote unquote yourself rather than automating it. But to continue here, what are the 5 levels, the original levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So we can sort of talk about this theory and break down more why it sucks.
Oh, yeah, wait, let me see. Okay, I think it's food and shelter, safety, sex, social approval, and then self-actualization. Did I get it right?
What's really funny here is you got love and belonging confused with sex, but I think that the progressive urban monoculture has morphed it into sex.
Yeah.
And so at the bottom, he has physiological needs.
Okay.
The most basic requirements for survival. These include air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction as essential for species.
Oh my God, we are going to invert that. No.
Invert the pyramid. Have those things and need nothing else.
Yeah.
And I love that from the very beginning, he made reproduction the bottom level need. Sex is a bottom level need for him, right? Which I think is very interesting in terms of how this influenced later fields of psychology and the urban monoculture. Safety needs. Once physiological needs are met, people seek security and stability. Examples: personal safety, financial security, job saving, health, property, and protection from harm or chaos. This one I just think is pure stupid. You can always imagine some threat to you. Everybody knows, the trans person who's screaming about how when somebody says we shouldn't shouldn't be gender transitioning a 7-year-old, and they're like, how could you say that? You're gonna kill me. You're gonna genocide everybody like me. It's like, no, I was just like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this to 7-year-olds. It's because they're 7, I mean, you want to kill me. So safety, and this is important about safety. And I think, a good book on this is Why Zebras Get Ulcers. Or don't get ulcers, sorry. Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Where he basically points out.
By Dr. Robert Lustig. He's wonderful.
Yeah,
wait.
so smart, Simone. Anyway, he basically points out that...
No, sorry, it's Robert Sapolsky. I'm sorry.
Robert
Lustig is the health guy, yeah.
That a zebra in nature has a series of biological mechanisms that puts their nervous system into an alternate state, and a lot of their biology into an alternate state when they think their life is existentially at risk, when they see a lion, for example, right? And so they freak out when they see the lion.
Yeah.
And you as a human have a problem. Your higher cognitive ability has given you the ability to imagine that your life is at risk.
Yes, we can make synthetic lions, and then we are constantly subject to synthetic lions. Whereas the zebra is only going to have the lion reaction when there's just an actual lion there.
So that lion reaction, if you utilize that to motivate, so for example, if you utilize that you have an existentially important test coming up to motivate yourself to focus on that test, and you genuinely believe this to be existential to you, and you allow that to put you in this alternate neurological state, you will be less good at retaining information and everything like that.
This
right?
is why I think people who are addicted to Blue Sky or X or whatever your social media platform is, especially if it has a lot of rage on it, are putting their health at so much risk because they're just choosing to get enraged by this, and they're just the years they're shaving off their lives. No, I think there are ways to do it right. Some people just scroll X and just chuckle incessantly. We've got people who do that, but that's rare.
Looks like.
Yeah.
Or a meaningful form of it is you have existential tests coming up. And instead of letting a fear of the existential nature of the test be what drives you to study, you are clear-minded enough to suppress other needs that you may have in that moment and say, no, I just need to focus on this because it is more important than these other needs I may feel in the moment. This is the area. Physiological needs, I think learning to suppress those can be indulgent. You feel physiological needs for a reason often. And the main physiological need that I would say that people should learn to suppress at times is arousal, because a lot of people feel arousal for a lot of things that just aren't particularly important to serving the need that arousal originally felt, which was getting you to have children, right?
Yeah.
As I said, you should think of arousal as saying, you should impregnate that. And if the thing isn't impregnatable, you're like, oh, you're not useful to me right now in this moment, right? This is not this is not serving the purpose it evolved to serve. So safety needs, completely negative, learn to suppress, right? Next, love and belonging needs, also called social needs. The need for interpersonal relationships and a sense of connection. This includes intimate relationships, family bonds, a sense of belonging to a group, affection, and feeling accepted by others. This is, again, I think completely toxic. And I think that this is really two needs being bundled as one. One is having other people accept you the way you accept yourself or see yourself. This is where the trans person says, I want them to accept me as a woman because that's the way I see myself. Or the guy who thinks that he's a 10-year-old child saying, I want them to accept me and my community and my family and my kids to accept me as a 10-year-old child because that's the way I see and conceptualize myself, right? It can be taken to mean that, and that's just obviously toxic to even on face value. But there's other wise, sane conservatives that will say, hey, well, at the very least, you should learn to, you should strive for acceptance from your community and family and everything like that. Where I would say, no, not if it interferes with larger, more important goals for yourself.
Yeah.
Time spent with family and masturbating those needs is no less removing you from either self-improvement through education, through whatever you need to improve your ability to act on the world, or directly acting on the world to attempt to make the world better. It is removing you from that. And as like Simone and I have, I think, a very healthy relationship. And yet we don't interact that much outside of these recordings because our interactions are fundamentally indulgent, be they sexual interactions or be they romantic interactions or love interactions or anything like that, right? So, and I think everybody logically they recognize it, right? I think that you have a duty, as far as you have a duty to attempt to help your partner meet the needs that they cannot suppress. That is the need for belonging and acceptance and arousal. But you should keep in mind that if you overmeet those needs, you functionally hurt their ability to help their wider suppression system. You go in there and you say, I'm going to make sure that you feel completely accepted with whoever you are. I don't think anyone should ever feel that way in a relationship. I know that I can disappoint Simone by not living up to her expectations of me. And that is a good thing. That is healthy in a relationship. There is nothing more hateful a person could say to their partner than I love you as you are, and I will always love you unconditionally. Even to a child. What if that child becomes a serial killer or something, right? Like that's a messed up thing to say to somebody, right? Like those people who are like, well, my son would never do this. They then just deny the person that they created and raised. Thoughts, Simone, before I go further?
I agree with you. Sorry, I had muted myself because Tex is singing.
And then esteem needs. He then divides this into two parts. Esteem, confidence, achievements, independence, and respect for oneself. This is completely toxic. It is not something that you should strive for at all. Either you accept yourself as somebody who is attempting to live a worthwhile life, or you do not. You do not, like, if you want to understand our wider philosophy, like if you're like, oh, this philosophy that they're laying out here sounds like a worldview I'd like to understand better, read our book or listen to our audiobook, The Pragmatist Guide to Life, where we lay out an alternate way to live. And I'll go over the basics of that in just a second. But confidence, achievements, independence, respect for oneself, right? If one of my kids can achieve more for the world while they live under our roof, that does not lessen the work that they did while we helped them. Use the tools that you were born with and had access to. Do not, because if you do the opposite and you allow those tools to say, oh, I don't really have independence because I'm living off of money I inherited or something like that, which we are not people who know this about us. We are definitely not. All of the money my family had got stolen, and it's very well documented in court records. You can look this up. I think it's even on our Wikipedia. But if you are a person living off of that and you allow yourself to feel lesser and then do all this indulgent charity giving and everything like that, as opposed to try to make yourself feel like, oh, I'm a good person, as opposed to say, no. What role do I need to serve within civilization? What is the optimal role for myself? Every wasted dollar is something you spent on a form of mental masturbation. But this also comes of respect for yourself. You don't need to work on respect for yourself. Be somebody worthy of respecting. Once you develop a world model about a good way to live and a good thing to be, you don't need to worry about respect for yourself, because you know if you have suppressed masturbatory desires, right, that you are achieving through your actions, or at least attempting to best you can, something meaningful in civilization. Somebody may ask me, Malcolm, if you didn't have kids, what would you be doing with your life? What would you be focused on in your life? And it's like the same stuff. I'd just be less effective at it, but it wouldn't make me necessarily a lesser person or have less respect for myself, because I knew I was acting on the best I could with what I had access to in my biology. And keep in mind, your biology can include things like genetic predilections for addictions and stuff like that. You just have to work on it as best you can to live the most productive life you can. And then the second category here is respect from others, status, recognition, prestige, strengths. People seek accomplishment, mastery, and appreciation here. People do not really seek respect from others. What people seek from others is they want other people to see and think of them the way that they see and think of themselves. If you have respect from others, but it's through an archetype or a caricature, and we know this because we have a lot of very famous friends that you don't see as authentic to the way you want to be perceived or to yourself, you often see the fame as a noose around your neck, and you will become annoyed by your fans, right? Because they don't conceptualize you the way you wish to be conceptualized. And you see this of a lot of famous actors and musicians and stuff like this, and they end up like blowing out. Like they should have everything they need, right? By Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And yet they seem to be the people most likely to crash out. Why are they the most likely to crash out if Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually a good way to contextualize what you need from life? Thoughts on that before I go further?
I agree. I think you see enough from people whose needs should technically be met per the pyramid that are clearly not thriving and clearly not working on whatever it is you expect them to be working on, having those other needs be met. And again, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that none of those things lower on the pyramid by modern standards, I think, can be met.
So, and I think that you see this even when you look at people who you have met and think about mental stability, right? The people who you know who have tons of wealth, maybe tons of sexual access, tons of, et cetera, like the movie star types, do they seem more mentally healthy and disciplined to you in terms of their, like, on their deathbed satisfaction with your life? Or think of your average, person who's like, say, Opus Dei or whatever, who's actually going through these mortification rituals, everything like that, attempting to learn self-discipline. Do they not seem more? Everybody knows that they're happier and better up, and not just happier, but happier in the way that anybody wants to be, right? Like the only true happiness you will ever feel is sacrificing for a goal that you have genuinely thought through and genuinely care about.
Well, that's why in general, people who have 4+ kids strike me as among those most self-actualized people. They've decided that something that isn't easy is important to them, and they are pursuing it effectively, and they feel a great sense of contentment and alignment as a result of that. It's one of the reasons why this story of this father of 7 is so shocking to me, because normally when someone goes through the great difficulty of having and raising 7 children, they clearly are expressing that they value children, and they are very involved in raising those children and feeling pretty aligned and good and contented with that. So it's so odd to me, this case. Yeah. But every story is complicated. So who knows, and sometimes people have a mini stroke and get brain damage or change significantly in terms of their personality, and no one realizes it. Or they have a tumor growing and their personality totally changes. And I wouldn't totally put it past, unless this is behavior that has long existed.
So later developments and expansion. So he developed some few extra parts to the chart in his later years.
Really?
He added cognitive needs, desire for knowing, understanding, curiosity, and explanation. This is the one good thing I think he has.
I just thought that was part of I thought that was self-actualization.
No, you need that before self-actualization, apparently. So next here, aesthetic needs, appreciation of beauty, balance, form, and symmetry.
No, that just sounds like a sensitivity.
Yeah, and transcendence needs, the highest level, involving helping others achieve self-actualization. He's directly borrowing from Buddhism here. Peak experiences beyond the self, spirituality, and connection to something greater, e.g. humanity, nature, or the universe. The shift—
I don't know, this sounds like the life coach problem where, When you have a life coach, the only thing you ever want to be is a life coach.
Yeah, that's where all new life coaches come from. Somebody was working with a life coach, and so the life coach told them, "Oh, well, you want to be a life coach," because that's what they thought was a good life.
Well, and typically the advice you get from people gets you to where they are, and advice from a life coach is going to get you to become a life coach.
So he views this as a shifted focus from pure self-fulfillment to selflessness, which again I see as just comical. Like, come on, you're either living a productive life or you're not, right? And part of that productive life can be helping other people break out. I mean, that was the first thing that we did when I was like, I want to do something like purely to help the world. The big early project we had was the Pragmatist Guide to Life, and the moral and philosophical framework laid out in that. And that framework, if you're unfamiliar with it, I'm going to briefly go over it. We're unfortunately going to have to cut this episode in half because it is too long at this point, and we haven't even got into the Nietzsche stuff.
Oh my gosh, wow, okay.
That it easily breaks into self-actualization versus the Übermensch. So I want to quickly talk here about the Pragmatist Guide to Life. Basically, we say that you first need to develop a framework for how you determine what is true in the world, in reality, because it is getting increasingly harder. And so you have a framework of sources of truth and how those sources interact with each other.
Yeah.
Then you use that source of truth to build up a sort of tree of beliefs about how the world works, with metaphysical stuff sort of lower on that tree. And if you break something lower on the tree, it breaks everything further down the tree of your beliefs. And we also go over how to build what you think is true. Like a good example is, because a lot of people are like, well, I just trust academics, and everyone knows that you can't just trust academics anymore. And somebody's like, well, I just trust the church. And it's like, well, historically the church has, put out specific perceptions of God and its own religious framework that has evolved since they have gone out. So, some level of, even if you're in like the most conservative, like Catholic group, even they know that through the various councils, things have evolved over time. Right. So, you have some more internal responsibility to decide things by yourself. And we go over like how you can do that. Like an easy explanation here is, if an organization puts out information that is counter to their goals, it is more likely to be true, right? Like if an academic puts out information that makes, and they don't have a long history of like anti-trans research or something like that makes transness look like a bad idea for kids, you can be like, oh, that's more likely to be true. Or if an oil firm puts out stuff that makes it look like, oil is actually damaging to the environment, you could be like, well, maybe they have some underlying, they're trying to create barriers to entry for small players or something, but it's probably more likely to be true. If somebody who is historically been critical of gender transition puts out something saying it's not that bad, you can be more likely to trust that, right? So there's things that you can build here. And then we say, once you have this framework for understanding reality, then you need to determine for yourself what your objective function is, sort of like what a utility function is for computers, which is to say the weighted mix of things that you are attempting to maximize with your life. Like you likely want some level of hedonism, just in case you're wrong about everything else. But then you want like a multiplier on like how maybe helping others feel good, if that's something you think of as having value. I do not. Or building up human civilization, and we go through in that book all of the various dumb things you may choose. Like if one of the reasons why hedonism is such a dumb thing to maximize in yourself or others is the things that make us feel good, we only feel because our ancestors who felt them had more surviving offspring. They're not things of intrinsic good, right? And this is one of the core reasons I see negative utilitarianism as so stupid. If you were programmed to feel something else, like suppose you were programmed to feel, and some humans are actually programmed to feel this because there's weird like poop fetishes, to think that rubbing poop on your face, like that makes you feel good, right? Is that an intrinsically good act now? Because of course not. It's ridiculous, right? Like that is not a barometer for any form of objective goodness within our reality,
right?
Which is one of the reasons why all of these we talk about martyrdom of man, has a very good way to put this, to escape our four-footed ancestry, all of these bestial desires and hallucinations, malformations of our world perspective created by this evolved side of us. Everything done based on that is definitionally evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Love you, Simone.
I love you too.
And you are a great wife, and I think are a natural Zen master of this, but I think it's because you got like naltrexone in your vein. Your opioid pathways like basically don't work.
Yeah. Well, and we know this too, that we suspect it's genetic because my dad just says that he like just did all the drugs.
And he's like, yeah, but I never get addicted to any of them. And I was like,
and he would, he'd like take up smoking on trips and stuff, and then come back and just not smoke anymore. Like just, he's literally, I can stop anything whenever I want to. And also whenever I drink, I just get drunk. Like nothing else happens. And I wonder what it is that other people experience that I'm missing. When I scroll, I just see stuff. I really want to know what it feels like.
I will describe it as being closest to what MSG tastes like. That is the closest other sensation that I can describe as to what the extra feel on top of drinking feels like.
So addiction is the umami of emotions.
Yes, it's the umami of emotions.
Delicious.
It's just that it's that enhancer of all the other emotions.
Salt of emotions. Gosh, wow. Imagine living my life, a life of food with no salt.
Umami isn't just salt.
No, salt and fat, basically, I think.
But it enhances the way you perceive other flavors.
Yeah. By the way, did you know there's this weird spoon that was invented in Japan? It uses like some kind of ionizer or something else that you can consume low sodium products, but when you eat off of the spoon, I think it uses some kind of electrical current. It's so Japan. It enables you to taste more of the salt. So you're eating a fraction of the amount of sodium, but you're getting the same sodium taste.
Japanese got some cool tech, I'll tell you.
Right. And it's not some kind of, it's not like those stupid, you put a scent cartridge in your water bottle products that you get from a YouTube influencer. It is actually, no, you are tasting the salt. It just sounds so cool. But yeah.
So I love that. By the way, another fun fact I learned that I didn't know, and this is from that Kirsch video on the guy who wanted to be 10. The original trans child influencer, the one who they realized that he was the wrong gender at, I think it was 3 or 4. And then they transitioned him or started him on, puberty blockers and transition at 7, and who was on the cover of National Geographic. Like they did a full cover story on him.
When was this?
In all of the news rounds. It was, I want to say about 10 years ago. Okay. Anyway, or maybe like 6 years ago or 7 years ago. Anyway, that individual now says that becoming trans ruined their lives, and they no longer identify as trans. They identify as, what is it, bigender or whatever, like
gender,
multi-gender, whatever it is that people. I can't remember.
Helicopter. Octavian would 100% identify as a attack helicopter, unironically.
You asked him, this was so funny. So Simone asks him, like, do you want to identify? Like, there's some people who think you can identify as a helicopter. Oh, no, it wasn't that. It was, do you want to marry a helicopter? That's what you asked him.
Yeah, I was joking. It's like, if you like helicopters so much, why don't you just marry one? And he was like, immediately I can't marry a helicopter. And I was just thrilled to hear him say such a reasonable thing. And he's like, the ring would fly right off. And no.
Now you're like, is this how you determine whether or not something is?
Can you put a ring on it? Then it's marryable.
No, I actually really like this interpretation, because he has said the point of marriage, in his mind, the point of marriage is putting a ring on something. And if you can't put a ring on something, you shouldn't marry it.
I could put a ring on a squirrel's tail, though. I could put a ring on a.
But Simone, the point I'm making here is that the point of marriage is not putting a ring on somebody's finger. It's getting married to somebody you can impregnate and have children with to start a family with.
Well, that's not where he is right now with the whole concept.
Obviously, he's a child. But once he understands that the point of marriage isn't the ring, but impregnation.
Okay, then he's like, I can't have a child with this person, therefore I won't marry them. I see.
And somebody would be like, what? You think that somebody who, is infertile isn't worthy of marriage? And it's like, if my kid asked me, should I marry this person? They're perfect for me in every other way, but they're infertile. And there isn't another way to have kids, like through surrogacy or through artificial wombs. I would say, absolutely, no, don't marry them. And they'd be like, what, do they not deserve marriage? Do they not deserve happiness? And I'm like, no, they can marry somebody else who's infertile, right? Like they don't need to waste the life of a fertile person on their own personal indulgence. And if they were living a purposeful life of sacrifice, they would understand that.
Mm.
And so I know that's an offensive thing to say, but it's something that, yeah, I absolutely, that is the point of a marriage.
I was infertile, Malcolm.
Well, we made you fertile.
We powered through it. That's the point.
You made yourself fertile through technology. Again, not cheating.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
You've done all of the drugs, all of the extra. You bring every kid into this world with more sacrifice than I'd think just about any other woman when bringing a child into the world. And through
a lot of people just die. Okay.
I mean, I think I would rather, I had to go through what you were going through and I just lived for hedonism. You haven't seen the drug. She has to take a needle that's like this long into her butt every single day for months with every kid that we have. Like it is, I couldn't even, I look at it and I couldn't even push it in for her. It is so gruesome. It's like you look at it and you're like, how does that not go through the bone?
You know, the first time I had to do a needle like that, both Malcolm and I were like, especially because I'm on the thinner side, it's going to hit my hip bone. There's no way this is not going to hit my hip bone. I still don't know where it goes. It's honestly, I'm like, I don't know how this works, but it works.
You are so tough.
I have permanent scarring. You can actually see the permanent scarring from all the needles. But I mean, you know, it's such a nice, like we have other friends who have permanent scarring because they have chronic diseases that have, you know, involved so many blood draws and so many other things. I would much rather have permanent scarring from needles due to trying to create new life rather than fighting for my own. You know what I mean? So it's a very lucky place to be.
What a profound thing to say, Simone. You are a priestess.
It's not profound. I'm lucky. It's not a profound thing.
Like this. You were just born enlightened. I love it. No, it's true.
No, I'm lucky that I'm not chronically ill and fighting for my life, and so are you. We should enjoy it while it lasts, because it's not going to. I'm going to get cancer for sure. I hope there's better treatments for when it hits.
Yeah, I love you, Simone.
Have
a spectacular day.
Bye.
Bye. Now we can do your episode next, or we could try doing the second part of this episode next. Let's do your episode.
Okay, great. When I don't know if you've been downstairs, but since Octavian finished his mandatory lessons of the day, he decided he didn't want to fly his RC helicopter. He wanted to set up an elaborate obstacle course for it. And it is elaborate. When you go down, you will see it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And also when we went down, there was some kind of bird, I think some kind of finch flying through our kitchen and living room. And I think they came in through the same part of our house that the other dead birds that used to be in that cabinet where the bunk beds now are would end up. So I think I sufficiently directed him out of the house, or her, but I don't know. So there might.
How was the comments today in the China video?
People were glad that we were covering it, broadly speaking, because it's not really being discussed.
I mean, if we end up breaking that story and it turns out to be accurate, which I think all the evidence shows that it is right now, before like the New York Times and the mainstream media breaks it, oh my God, we deserve so much credit for that. The internet, I deserve internet points. I don't know what those look like. Maybe another meme, maybe another Know Your Meme page. I think they've integrated all of our Know Your Meme pages. And very sadly, and I'd love if one of our fans fixed this, because we don't edit our own Wikipedia page, but they took away the picture on our Wikipedia page.
It was a picture that your late mother took. How dare they besmirch your memory, her efforts.
Oh, I'm sure somebody was like, well, it's technically not whatever license. I don't know how to give a picture with the right license.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's not in Wikimedia Commons. If we can literally just contribute images to Wikimedia Commons if you want me to.
I think that's a good idea. Just dump a bunch of images in, and then somebody who wants to use them can, that are like ours. So
yeah, because otherwise it could be copyright infringement, and technically that was, I guess, copyright infringement of your late mother's work. I'm not really sure how that works when someone dies, but anyway.
I mean, all our videos are free for public use. Like, if anybody wants to like cut up or re-stitch our videos, we would never complain.
Yeah, but they're not published online as, for example, Creative Commons. That used to be one of the major nonprofits I would donate to. I really like Creative Commons.
Here's a good idea. We should put our pictures on the Pronatalist website under a Creative Commons license, so that anybody who wants to take them from there and use them can. So just very clearly put the Pronatalist website under a Creative Commons license.
Honestly, I mean, except I think Wikipedia is one of the few exceptions now because of AI. It kind of doesn't matter anymore. You know, things like licenses of that sort are absurd. People shouldn't waste time thinking about that. But I will therefore handle that. One of the most funny comments on what's going on with CCP in terms of substantive and smart, one of our collective friends also who listens to the podcast was saying they don't think it was an attempted coup. They think that Xi Jinping is actually trying to prepare the country for war, and like actual war, and that has this person really nervous. But he doesn't think it was a coup. He just thinks that Xi is like doing everything.
Arrested the only two sitting members of the council other than himself, and
who were opposed to war with Taiwan. He's like, let's get it done. We're doing this. And if you don't want to do it, you're out.
And their entire families. This wasn't like
you need to. Yeah. If you need to remove all impediments to war with Taiwan and you're ready to go, I could see a world in which that makes sense. This person also pointed out just the sheer and intense opacity of the CCP and its inner workings, which leads to rampant conspiracy theories. So to a certain extent, anyone's guess is as good as anyone else's, because
I don't think that's true either. Not anyone's guess is as good as anyone else's. There are people who have in the past made predictions about China's future actions, and those predictions have turned out to be accurate, or made predictions about what was happening, and then later we learned that stuff was actually happening.
Yeah.
That's why I rely on a commenter like Lay's Real Talk, because she is one of those people for me.
Oh, that's funny. This same person was like, I hate Lay's Real Talk. Just go back and watch her various predictions she's made and see how those play out. That was exactly his argument against her analysis, actually.
By the way, if you had been watching Lay's Real Talk and her predictions, you would know all the rumors leading up to the various assassination attempts against these generals and against Xi, was predicting that these generals would be ousted dramatically and in a very high profile way, which is exactly what happened, and in a higher profile way than any even like confirmed insurrectionist had been denounced, in terms of how quickly and loudly they were denounced after their arrest and the arrest of their entire families. So the point being here is, you would have seen this coming if you had been watching her. You would not have seen this coming if you had been watching mainstream news. And we do know that this happened, and it was a complete reversal of things. So this idea of like, oh, she doesn't predict it. Clearly, she does have some sort of insider knowledge of what's going on. And I love that some of the people who are just so brain cucked on China are like, no, it's not a major sign that every single major general other than Xi and the person arresting them were arrested in the CCP's military. That's not a sign of a major turnover in how the government works, that everyone who can actually, arrest or enforce power was removed in a very short period, and that was consolidated. I think it just shows the sheer levels of denialism that these people will undertake to believe that the CCP is not undergoing a severe restructuring right now.
So... Yeah, the funny comment that I got actually came from Octavian, who saw the title card for the thing, the Bleeding Winnie the Pooh. And as we've not read Winnie the Pooh books to him or anything like that, they're just not very substantive or interesting, in my opinion. He didn't know who Winnie the Pooh was. And he was like, who is that? Because it's, more interesting than all the faces we put on our podcast normally. And I said, it's Winnie the Pooh. And he suddenly looked very, very disturbed. Not because this plush bear was bleeding, but because some horrible person decided to name a bear Pooh. And he was like, I feel very bad for the bear. I'm going to give the bear a new name. Now he's just like on a whole campaign of we need to save this poor man.
Winnie the Pooh.
His bear has been
named after
mistreated egregiously. Who could do that? Which I get, actually, especially because kids are all about poo jokes. How on earth did it work that, I guess, kids of that time when those books first were written were not as vulgar as the kids today? They would never have thought that such a term was, maybe they had a different word for excrement, for fecal matter. I don't know. Should look that up. Anyway, sorry for distracting from this.
Oh wait, and this is gonna be the floor for it.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Why did you put this?
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, this is the floor for it? You're right. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that. We're making the castle.
Wow.
Yeah, we're making the castle.
Wow. Yeah.
These are a practicing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, look.
What are they?
Hang on me.
Yeah? Ooh.
Upon the green team and the tan team, it's the black team.
What? Are they the coolest?
I'm gonna be on the black team. Oh, not like the other green guys. I'm gonna be on the black.
Okay, guys, where is this? Here we go.
Another floor.
Oh, thank you, Octavian. Can you find all the floors for me?
Yeah.